the paralyzed alien woman thrown into the river, saved by a human hero. The rivers of Aara were not gentle. They were wide, deep, and swift, winding across the planet like silver threads in the endless green of floating jungles. The river banks were dotted with cities of glass and metal, structures balanced on platforms that floated lightly on the water's surface. Ships with glimmering sails glided silently above the waves, carrying traders, explorers, and diplomats. But in one quiet corner, far from the bustling trade routes, trouble was brewing. Liara, the Veari people, had always known danger. Born paralyzed from the waist down, she had learned to rely on her mind, her wit, and the kindness of others. Her people, graceful and tall, with shimmering teal skin and eyes that reflected the river's light, often underestimated her because she could not walk. But Liara's mind was sharp, her curiosity vast, and her courage quietly strong. She could read the flow of politics as easily as she read the currents of the river. That evening, the twin suns of Aara were dipping low, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold. Liara had just left a council meeting discussing trade disputes between rival clans. Though she had been included in the meeting as an advisor, whispers followed her as she moved back to her small transport pod. Jealous eyes from other factions watched her closely, their envy simmering beneath polite smiles. Ethan, a human volunteer worker with the planetary exploration team, stood nearby on a narrow bridge. He had come from Earth decades ago, joining efforts to study alien societies and promote cooperation. His hair was sun-bleached, his hands calloused from years of work in alien environments, but his eyes, bright and alert, never missed a detail. He had been studying the flow patterns of the river for a research project when he noticed movement in the distance, a small figure struggling near the water's edge. At first, Ethan thought it was a simple accident. Veari citizens were often cautious around the river, but accidents happened. He adjusted his visor to see clearly. The figure was Liara, and something was wrong. Two shadowed figures were pushing her toward the river. Her arms flailed, but she could not step back. Panic surged in Ethan's chest. Without thinking, he sprinted toward the edge. "Stop!" he shouted, but the sound was lost in the roar of the water. The next moment, Liara tumbled into the fast-flowing river. The current snatched her immediately, carrying her downstream with terrifying speed. Ethan didn't hesitate. He leaped over the railing, feeling the rush of wind and the pull of gravity. Water hit him hard, cold and forceful, but he kicked against it and swam toward Liara. The river was unforgiving, and the Veari rivals who had thrown her were now retreating, satisfied with their cruel work. Ethan reached her just as a large wave threatened to drag her under. He grabbed her slender frame, careful not to hurt her. "I've got you." "Hold on," he shouted. Liara's wide eyes met his, a mix of fear, confusion, and faint relief. Her voice was barely audible over the roar of the water. "Thank you, human," she managed, the words breaking against the current. Ethan maneuvered them both toward a partially submerged platform. He gripped a vine that hung low from a river tree, swinging them just enough to reach safety. Liara coughed as water poured from her lungs, shivering. Ethan pulled her onto the wooden surface of the platform, cradling her carefully. She was soaked, trembling and exhausted. "You're safe now," Ethan said gently, scanning the river for any sign of further danger. The rivals had vanished, leaving only the roar of the water and the soft glow of bioluminescent plants on the riverbank. Liara tried to stand, but the paralysis reminded her that she could not. Ethan quickly made a small sling from a piece of his jacket, supporting her as she adjusted to sitting. He noted the bruises forming on her arms from the fall. "We need to get you somewhere safe," he said. "Can you tell me where your home is?" She hesitated, then nodded. "The floating city of Alvarez, but it is far from here, and they may still be looking for me." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we'll have to move fast. Can you hold on tight? I can carry you if necessary." Liara nodded, trusting him in a way she rarely trusted anyone. The journey began. Ethan carried Liara through narrow paths along the riverbanks, using his knowledge of local flora to avoid obstacles. The bioluminescent plants glowed faintly, lighting the way. Occasionally, Liara's curiosity peeked through her fear. "Human, how do you manage the water so well?" she asked, watching him navigate small rapids with careful strokes. Ethan smiled faintly. "Practice, patience, and a lot of mistakes." The river teaches you quickly if you pay attention. Despite the danger, Liara felt a strange sense of calm. Ethan's steady presence, his quick thinking, and his clear concern for her safety reminded her of something she had almost forgotten. Not all humans were outsiders seeking only profit or knowledge. They could be heroes. Hours passed. The sun dipped completely, leaving the river glowing softly under the light of bioluminescent plants and the twin moons of Aara. Ethan paused to catch his breath, setting Liara down on a small, dry rock. "We're not far from a safe cave network," he said. "It's hidden from most travelers, and it has supplies." Liara looked around, exhausted, yet her eyes sparkled with intelligence. I can help guide us. I know these waters better than most." Ethan nodded. "Good. We need every advantage." As they continued, the distant sound of the river's roar reminded them both of how lucky they had been. Without Ethan, Liara would have been lost in the deep currents. Without her knowledge, Ethan would have struggled to navigate safely. Together, they balanced each other, human ingenuity and alien wisdom. Suddenly, a shadow flitted across the riverbank ahead. Ethan froze, scanning quickly. "Did you see that?" he whispered. Liara squinted, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. "Rival, maybe, but small. They are scouting, not attacking." Ethan's mind raced. "Then we need to move faster and smarter. Follow my lead." Using floating plants as cover, they slipped silently along the riverbank. Ethan instructed Liara to remain still whenever they passed exposed areas, carrying her across narrow streams and small rapids with careful precision. Finally, as the twin moons reached their highest point, Ethan spotted a hidden entrance to the cave network. It was almost invisible, masked by overhanging vines and glowing moss. "Here," he said softly. "We can rest for now." Liara allowed herself a sigh of relief. Her body was still weak, but her mind was sharp. She studied Ethan carefully, realizing how rare it was to find a being so dedicated to another's safety without expectation of reward. Humans, she thought, had more courage and kindness than her own people sometimes realized. Ethan set her down gently inside the cave. The interior was cool and dry, and faint crystals along the walls reflected the moonlight outside. "You'll be safe here," he said. "We can plan the next steps in the morning." Liara looked around the cave, then back at Ethan. "Thank you, human, for saving me. I did not think anyone would come." Ethan smiled. "I promised myself a long time ago that if I could help, I would. Today, that promise was you." They settled for the night, the sound of the river distant but ever present. Outside, the world was still dangerous, but inside the cave, a fragile sense of safety began to take root. And as they rested, both human and alien realized something important. Survival was not only about strength. It was about trust, courage, and the willingness to act when others would hesitate. The river had thrown Liara into danger, but it had also brought her into the path of a hero. And in that moment, a bond was formed that would change both their fates forever. The cave was quiet, except for the distant murmur of the river flowing outside. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of minerals and moss. Ethan had gathered a few pieces of dry wood from the cave's entrance and made a small fire, careful to keep the flames low so the smoke would not draw attention. Liara sat on a flat rock, wrapped in a blanket he had fashioned from his jacket. Her teal skin glimmered faintly in the firelight, her eyes reflecting both exhaustion and alertness. "Are you hungry?" Ethan asked, his voice calm, almost soothing. He had scavenged some fruits from the riverbank earlier, small, glowing orbs that were edible for both humans and Veari. Liara shook her head weakly. "No, not yet, but thank you." Her words were soft, hesitant, but filled with sincerity. Ethan nodded. "You'll need your strength soon. The river can only take you so far, and the path ahead is tricky." Liara studied him carefully. "Why, help me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Humans do not always care about aliens." Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe not all humans, but I promised myself a long time ago that I would help when I could. Today, that promise was you." For a moment, silence filled the cave. Outside, the river continued its steady roar. Inside, two very different beings shared a fragile bond, a connection built on trust and courage. The next morning, the cave's interior glowed faintly under the light of the twin suns. Ethan had prepared a small raft using vines, lightweight logs, and some floating plants. It would be slow, but it could carry both him and Liara safely down the river. "Are you ready?" he asked, checking the raft for stability. Liara nodded. "Yes, but the river is dangerous. I can feel the currents from here." Ethan gave her a reassuring smile. "Then we will be careful. I will guide us." They set off cautiously. The raft drifted smoothly at first, but soon the river narrowed and the current became stronger. Ethan used a long pole to steer, pushing against rocks and guiding the raft through twists and turns. Liara held on tightly, her fingers brushing the glowing moss that grew along the river's edge. "Human, why do you not fear the river?" she asked, her voice tinged with awe. Ethan glanced at her. "Because I respect it. The river is strong, but it can also teach you. You only fear what you do not understand." Liara considered his words. Humans, she realized, were different from her own kind. They were not only curious and brave, but patient. Even in danger, they observed, learned, and adapted. Perhaps that was why Ethan had been able to save her. Hours passed, and the river grew more unpredictable. Rocks jutted out from the surface, creating whirlpools and eddies. Ethan steered carefully, demonstrating his skill and patience. Liara offered guidance as best she could, pointing out subtle changes in the water's movement. Her keen observation of currents and hidden underwater plants proved invaluable. "Left, left now!" she shouted suddenly, pointing toward a narrow channel. Ethan adjusted the raft direction, narrowly avoiding a submerged log that could have capsized them. "You are amazing at this," Ethan said, smiling despite the tension. "You see the river like I never could." Liara allowed a small smile in return. "I have studied it all my life. It is like a living map." As they continued, Ethan noticed movement along the riverbank. Shadows flitted between the glowing plants. He froze, raising a hand to signal Liara to stay still. "They're watching," he whispered. Liara's eyes widened. "The ones who threw me, are they following? Maybe, or maybe it's just curiosity. Either way, we need to stay careful." Ethan adjusted the raft, keeping close to the bank and using overhanging vines as cover. They moved silently, two figures blending into the river's natural camouflage. Hours turned into the late afternoon. The sun began to lower, casting long golden beams across the water. Ethan and Liara reached a small area where the river opened into a shallow lagoon. The water was calm here, protected by tall trees and floating plants. He set the raft down gently. "This is a good place to rest," he said. "We can gather food and water without being seen." Liara looked around, the relief clear in her eyes. I did not know such places existed. Hidden safe like a secret world." Ethan nodded. "The world has many secrets. You just have to look carefully." They gathered fruit, some small river fish, and fresh water. Ethan even found some healing herbs native to the floating plants, which he prepared carefully. Liara observed and helped as much as she could, offering advice on which plants were safe. As night fell, they built a small fire. Ethan sat next to Liara, careful not to expose her to the open river. "You know," he said quietly, "you are very brave. Most people would have given up a long time ago." Liara's gaze met his. I have no choice sometimes. But I did not think anyone would come for me. I am grateful." Ethan smiled softly. "Then let's promise to keep moving together. We'll make it to Alvarez safely. You have too much to give to your people to be lost now." Liara nodded. The trust between them grew, formed not just by necessity, but by genuine respect. Humans were different, she realized. They faced danger without fear of loss, and their hearts often led them to act where others hesitated. The next morning, they resumed their journey. The river flowed more swiftly now, and the raft required all of Ethan's skill to navigate. Liara provided guidance, pointing out submerged obstacles and warning of sudden whirlpools. Together, their strengths combined, they moved forward with growing confidence. Midday brought a sudden challenge. A fallen tree blocked the river, forming a natural dam. The water swirled violently around it, threatening to overturn the raft. Ethan assessed the situation quickly. "We'll need to move carefully," he said. "I'll use the vines to anchor the raft while we push past the log." Liara nodded, her hands gripping the edge of the raft. "We can do it." Slowly, steadily. Ethan worked carefully, using his strength and knowledge of river dynamics. Liara offered suggestions, noticing subtle changes in the water's flow that indicated a safe path. Inch by inch, they navigated past the obstacle, hearts pounding but spirits undeterred. Once free, they rested briefly on a nearby sandbank. Liara's cheeks were flushed in the effort, her eyes bright with admiration. "Human, you are clever, brave, and kind," she said softly. Ethan chuckled lightly, feeling both pride and humility. "And you are resourceful, intelligent, and courageous. Without your guidance, I would have been lost a long time ago." For the first time since the river had claimed her, Liara felt hope. She realized that together, they were stronger than any current, any obstacle, or any threat. Humans, she thought, were not just visitors to the galaxy. They could be heroes, capable of courage and compassion that inspired even the most capable of her own people. As the sun dipped low again, they approached a narrow channel, leading to a hidden cluster of floating platforms. "This should take us closer to Alvarez," Ethan said. "We need to be careful. The river narrows here and the current is faster." Liara nodded, her confidence in him growing. "I trust you, human. Lead the way." Ethan smiled, feeling the bond between them strengthen. Together, they pushed forward, navigating the fast-flowing water with skill, patience, and trust. The dangers were real, but the hope of safety, the promise of survival, and the unspoken connection between human and alien carried them onward. And though the river still held secrets, twists, and threats, Ethan and Liara faced them together, an alliance of courage, wisdom, and compassion that neither had expected, but both now relied upon completely. The journey was far from over, but for the first time since she had been thrown into the river, Liara believed she would survive, and she knew that her survival would not just be her own. It would be a testament to the strength and courage of the humans who had come to her aid. The river had grown wild. Its waters churned and twisted like a living thing, moving faster than Ethan had expected. The floating platforms that had once guided them gently downstream were now sparse and broken. The air was filled with the scent of wet moss and the soft cries of distant river birds. Liara tightened her grip on the raft, feeling every jolt and sway as Ethan guided them through the treacherous currents. Her sharp eyes scanned the water, pointing out submerged rocks and fast-moving eddies. Even paralyzed from the waist down, she was a keen navigator, her mind reading the river like a map. "We're approaching the hidden forest," she said, her voice steady but tinged with concern. "The water is calm there, but the path is narrow and full of obstacles. We will have to move carefully." Ethan nodded, leaning into the river's current as he pushed the raft toward the forest entrance. "Good. Lead the way, Liara. I'll follow your instructions." The hidden forest was a wonder unlike any Ethan had seen before. Trees rose from floating islands in the river, their roots dangling like curtains into the water. Bioluminescent plants hung from branches, casting a soft, magical glow. Strange vines coiled along the riverbanks, some thick as Ethan's arm, others thin but surprisingly strong. The forest seemed alive, reacting to their presence with rustling leaves and gentle waves in the water. "It is beautiful," Ethan said, awe in his voice, "almost like the forest is welcoming us." Liara allowed herself a small smile. "It is a safe place if you know the path. My people once traveled these waters in secret, avoiding rivals and pirates, but few outsiders see it." Ethan adjusted the raft, maneuvering around a large, submerged tree trunk. "Then we are lucky to have you. Without your guidance, we would be lost." They moved slowly, carefully, the raft gliding over the calm patches of water, while Ethan navigated the faster eddies. Liara pointed out the plants that could be used as anchors or poles, helping Ethan guide the raft more efficiently. Together, they worked as a team, human ingenuity and alien knowledge complementing each other perfectly. Hours passed, and the forest seemed to close around them. Sunlight filtered through dense leaves, creating patterns on the water. Strange birds, bright with iridescent feathers, swooped over the river, their songs echoing softly. Ethan and Liara were careful, knowing that one wrong move could send them into a whirlpool hidden beneath the roots. Suddenly, a low rumble came from the water ahead. Ethan froze, scanning the river. Something large, moving beneath the surface. Stay calm. Liara nodded, her eyes narrowing. It is a river guardian, a creature that protects the forest. They are not dangerous unless provoked, but sudden movements can anger them. Ethan held the raft steady, slowly moving closer to the source of the disturbance. A large shadow passed beneath them, rippling through the water like a moving mountain. Ethan kept the raft balanced, careful not to make sudden movements. "Do you think it will attack?" he asked quietly. Liara shook her head. "No. If we show respect and move carefully, it will leave us alone. These creatures sense fear and aggression, but calm and purpose are recognized too." Ethan adjusted his stance, nodding to her guidance. Slowly, inch by inch, they navigated past the shadow. The water calmed, and the forest seemed to relax around them. Ethan exhaled, feeling a mix of relief and admiration. "You really know this river." Liara smiled faintly. "I have studied it my whole life. It is part of me as much as I am part of it." The journey through the forest revealed more wonders. Floating plants with glowing flowers provided natural bridges. Small fish leapt from the water in synchronized patterns, and vines with soft, sticky surfaces offered support when Ethan needed to push or anchor the raft. Each obstacle they overcame strengthened their bond. Ethan's confidence grew as he learned from Liara's insight, and Liara's trust in him deepened with every careful maneuver. By mid-afternoon, they reached a part of the river that widened into a calm lagoon surrounded by floating trees and glowing moss. The current was gentle, and the raft moved smoothly over the water. Ethan allowed Liara to rest, adjusting the sling he had made to support her fully. "You have done well," he said, admiration clear in his voice. "The forest would have been impossible without your guidance." Liara looked around at the soft glow of the lagoon, her mind calm for the first time since being thrown into the river. "And you human, you have courage and patience. You do not panic, even in danger. That is rare among your kind." Ethan chuckled softly. Maybe we just act when we must. Fear does not help anyone." The peaceful moment was brief. A sudden movement along the far bank caught their attention. Shapes flitting between the trees, quick and deliberate. Ethan's senses sharpened immediately. "They are here," Liara whispered. "The rivals. They have followed us into the forest." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we must use the forest to our advantage. Can you guide us through the smaller channels? They will not fit their vessels there." Liara nodded, her mind racing. "Yes, follow me and stay quiet. One wrong sound and they may find us." Using small side channels barely wider than their raft, Ethan and Liara moved silently. Twisting vines and low-hanging branches created natural cover. The rivals' voices were faint, distant, and muffled, unable to navigate the narrow waterways. Ethan listened carefully, adjusting their course according to Liara's precise instructions. Hours passed in tense silence. The sun dipped behind the forest canopy, leaving the lagoon bathed in moonlight. Ethan and Liara finally reached a small hollow, hidden beneath overhanging roots and soft moss. It was a natural shelter, protected from view, and with enough space to rest safely. "You are safe here for now," Liara whispered. "They cannot reach this place. The forest protects those it trusts." Ethan carefully set the raft aside and helped Liara settle on a soft bed of moss and floating leaves. She looked at him with gratitude and quiet admiration. "Human, without you, I would not have made it, not even this far." Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth at his chest. "And without you, I could not have guided us. Together, we make a good team." The night passed slowly, the forest alive with glowing insects, gentle rustling, and distant calls of nocturnal creatures. Ethan and Liara shared stories of their worlds. She spoke of Aara's floating cities, her family, and the customs of her people. He spoke of Earth, of human exploration, and of the promise that humanity carried wherever it went. In the quiet hours, Liara realized something she had never admitted. She had begun to hope. Humans, she thought, could be heroes, not just strong or clever, but genuinely kind and brave. And Ethan was living proof of that truth. Morning brought a faint mist over the lagoon, the air cool and fresh. Ethan and Liara prepared to continue their journey. The forest ahead was thicker, the channels narrower, but they were ready. Together, they had survived the river's wildness, navigated the forest's hidden dangers, and outsmarted their pursuers. "Are you ready?" Ethan asked, securing Liara in the sling. Liara nodded, her eyes bright. "Yes," we continue. "I trust you, human. Lead the way." Ethan guided the raft into channels, moving with precision and care. The river twisted like a silver ribbon to the dense forest, and the glowing plants reflected off the water, creating a surreal path. Obstacles arose, fallen trees, tangled vines, shallow rapids, but each challenge was met with patience, clever thinking, and careful teamwork. By midday, they glimpsed their goal, a hidden path that led to Alvarez, the floating city. The city was faint in the distance, golden platforms sparkling under the sun. Liara's eyes widened. "We are close, but the final stretch is the hardest. The current's faster, and rivals may still try." Ethan adjusted his grip on the pole. "Then we stay sharp. We have come this far. Nothing will stop us now." Together, human and alien moved forward, the river carrying them to the heart of the hidden forest, proving that courage, patience, and trust could overcome any obstacle. And as the forest glow faded behind them, both knew that the journey was not just about survival. It was about the bond they had forged, the courage they had discovered, and the hope that one day, two very different beings could change the world together. The floating city of Alvarez shimmered in the early morning light, its towers reflecting the twin suns above. Platforms of glass, metal, and living vines stretched over the river, like a living mosaic. For Liara, seeing her home again was both a relief and a source of anxiety. The rivals who had thrown her into the river could still be waiting, and she could not move quickly on her own. Yet beside her, Ethan's steady presence gave her courage. They approached the city cautiously, navigating through the smaller tributaries that branched from a main river. Ethan's knowledge of both human engineering and river navigation made him the perfect guide. Liara instructed him carefully, pointing out channels and currents that she had memorized from years of study. Together, they moved almost silently, blending into the floating flora and avoiding the city's usual traffic. "Almost there," Ethan whispered. "Stay low, and we'll get you to safety without anyone noticing us." Liara nodded. Her mind raced with gratitude and admiration. Humans were so different from most Ve'ari she had encountered. They acted with courage, empathy, and ingenuity. They could make split-second decisions under pressure, but always with care for others. Ethan had risked his life to save her, not for recognition, not for reward, but because he believed in helping those in need. As they neared the city's edge, a faint alarm sounded in the distance. Liara stiffened. They know I am coming back. My rivals." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we need to move faster. Hold on tight." He steered the raft toward a hidden landing platform beneath one of the tallest towers. The platform was partially shaded by hanging gardens, almost invisible to anyone passing by. With careful precision, Ethan guided the raft onto the platform. He lifted Liara gently from the raft, cradling her in his arms. Her eyes met his, filled with trust and hope. "You've made it," he said softly. "You're home." Liara smiled faintly, her voice trembling with emotion. "Because of you, human. I would have been lost without you." They moved quickly through the shaded walkways, using small passages known only to Liara. She directed Ethan to a secluded chamber in her family's quarters, a place where she could rest and regain her strength. The chamber was quiet, safe, and filled with soft light from floating crystals embedded in the walls. Liara lowered herself onto a cushioned seat, sighing with relief. We made it." Ethan smiled. "Yes, and now we can plan the next steps. Your rivals cannot harm you here, and your family will help ensure your safety." Even in the safety of her home, Liara felt a surge of responsibility. Her people had trusted her judgment, but her rivals had tried to remove her from the equation entirely. Now, she realized that courage, intelligence, and a little help from a human friend could change everything. As the day passed, Liara shared her story with her family and advisors, praising Ethan's bravery and wisdom. "He saved me," she said firmly. "He guided me, protected me, and helped me survive. Humans are remarkable." Ethan, standing humbly at her side, felt both pride and humility. He had acted out of instinct, compassion, and a belief in doing what was right. Now, seeing the gratitude in Liara's eyes and the respect of her people, he understood that his actions had a lasting impact. Liara's rivals soon discovered that their plan had failed. The hidden passages, Ethan's ingenuity, and Liara's guidance had prevented any harm. The city's authorities, alerted by Liara's family, moved swiftly to prevent further conflict. Through careful negotiation and diplomacy, the situation was resolved without violence. Liara watched the river from a high platform, the twin suns casting golden light across the water. Ethan joined her, standing beside her as they overlooked the flowing currents. "You've changed my life," Liara said quietly, "not just by saving me, but by showing me the courage and kindness that humans can offer. I will not forget this." Ethan smiled, gazing at the river. "And I have learned much from you as well. You showed me patience, understanding, and insight. Together, we proved that humans and aliens can work as equals, helping each other overcome any challenge." For a long moment, they stood in silence, watching the river flow peacefully below. The danger was over, but the memory of the journey remained vivid. Every rapid, every whirlpool, every moment of uncertainty. They had survived not because of force, but because of trust, intelligence, and courage. Liara turned to Ethan. "I want to ensure my people are safe, that our alliances remain strong, and that no one suffers as I did. Will you help me?" Ethan nodded without hesitation. "Yes, I will help. Humans and Veari can learn from each other, and together we can make a difference." In the days that followed, Ethan worked alongside Liara and her family to strengthen communications between Veari cities and visiting human researchers. He helped develop safer river routes, guided training programs for young Veari navigators, and shared knowledge of Earth science and technology. Liara, inspired by his guidance and bravery, took on new responsibilities within her city, becoming a leader known not for physical strength, but for intelligence, courage, and compassion. Together, they hosted gatherings that brought humans and Veari closer. Children learned about both species' ways, and adults shared knowledge, creating bonds of trust and friendship. The river, once a place of danger, became a symbol of unity, resilience, and cooperation. One evening, as the twin sun set, Ethan and Liara returned to the same platform where he had first saved her. The river reflected the colors of the sky, flowing endlessly toward distant horizons. "You saved me once," Liara said softly, "but you also inspired me. You showed me that courage and kindness can overcome fear and danger. I am grateful beyond words." Ethan smiled, his eyes reflecting the glowing river. "And you saved me in a way, too. You taught me patience, awareness, and the strength that comes from wisdom. Together, we make a strong team." Liara laughed softly, a sound like wind over water. Yes, a human and a Veari, united by courage, trust, and friendship. As night fell, the river sparkled under the moonlight, the floating city glowing softly in the distance. Ethan and Liara remained on the platform for a while, watching the calm waters and reflecting on their journey. The challenges they had faced, the river, the obstacles, and the rivals, were behind them, but their bond remained stronger than ever. In that quiet moment, both knew that the galaxy was vast, filled with dangers, wonders, and mysteries. But they also knew something even more important. When humans and aliens worked together, combining courage, intelligence, and compassion, there was little they could not overcome. And so, the story of Liara and Ethan ended not with conflict or fear, but with triumph, hope, and the promise of a brighter future. The paralyzed alien woman who had been thrown into the river had survived, and in the process, humanity had shown its best self, brave, caring, and ingenious. The river flowed on, as it always had, carrying life, light, and the story of an unlikely friendship that would inspire generations to come.